I used to think late-night ramen runs and Netflix marathons were the highlight of our friendship. But that weekend, tucked away in a weathered lakeside cabin far from the noise of campus, something shifted. Something I didn't see coming. Or maybe, something I'd been avoiding for a long time. Dylan and I had been roommates since sophomore year, thrown together by housing assignments and a shared hatred of early morning classes. We clicked fast. Same music taste, same sarcastic humor, same obsession with bad horror films and diner pancakes at 2 a.m. If I had a family member describe me, they'd probably say I'm the quieter one, observant, maybe too much in my own head. Dylan? He's a walking contrast, charming in that messy-haired, confident way. He fills the silence I leave behind. The trip had been his idea. Midterms had drained us both, and he'd scored the cabin. Through a friend of a friend whose aunt was off the grid for the month. Just the two of us, a pile of snacks, and no reliable Wi-Fi. His dream. And secretly, mine too. The moment we arrived, something tightened in my chest. Not panic, anticipation. The air smelled of pine and old wood. Wind stirred the lake in rhythmic, calming waves. The inside of the cabin had this warm, rustic charm. Creaky floorboards, mismatched mugs, and a fireplace that crackled like it had a heartbeat of its own. Dylan dropped his bag in the middle of the room like he owned the place. I neatly tucked mine into the corner, pretending not to notice when his sweatshirt brushed my arm. I kept telling myself this was just a break from college stress. But when Dylan flopped onto the couch, kicked off his shoes and patted the spot beside him, I felt it again. That pulse of something more. Something dangerous. Something I wasn't ready to name. He talked while I unpacked snacks. Easy, casual, like always. But I couldn't stop glancing over. The way his jaw flexed when he laughed. The way his socks didn't match. The way he looked at me like we'd always known each other, even when we hadn't said a word. I didn't come here expecting anything to happen. Honestly, I'd worked hard to keep certain thoughts boxed up and buried. But now, with no distractions, no excuses, and only one bedroom between us, those thoughts had a way of slipping through the cracks. Dylan and I weren't supposed to be close. Freshman year, we lived on opposite ends of campus. He was all about late-night parties and group study sessions, while I found comfort in quiet corners and noise-canceling headphones. But during sophomore housing, the system paired us together, by some stroke of random chance, or cosmic irony. He brought the chaos, I brought the calm. Where I organized our fridge by color-coded Tupperware, he shoved leftover pizza next to almond milk and called it diversity. Where I studied in silence, he could only focus with loud music blasting. Still, we found a rhythm. It was strange how fast we fell into sync, like we were designed to clash just enough to fit. Somewhere between 2 a.m. grocery store runs and sharing hoodies on laundry days, things shifted. I can't pinpoint when exactly. But it was probably the day he showed up outside my photography class holding a coffee and a pack of sour gummy worms because I'd looked exhausted all week. He shrugged it off like it was nothing. Like he hadn't just noticed something no one else had. At the cabin, we settled into old habits with scary ease. He hogged the couch blankets. I made pancakes that were slightly burnt on one side. And we argued for 15 minutes over whether The Thing was a better horror movie than Hereditary. He teased me for my old man slippers, and I rolled my eyes when he misquoted a poem I liked. "You're such a nerd," he said, tossing a peanut M&M at me from across the room. "Better than being a chaos goblin," I shot back. "That's Goblin Prince to you," he smirked. It was all normal, all easy. But then came the sleeping bag incident. The cabin only had one bed, which we'd known, but we figured we'd bring separate sleeping bags and set up on the floor. Simple. Except the floor turned out to be uneven and oddly cold, and sometime, around midnight, we realized one of the bags had a busted zipper. Mine. Dylan looked at me from across the room, eyes flicking to the bed and then back to me. "We can share. I mean, if you're not weird about it." "I'm not," I said too quickly. "I mean, it's just a bed." "Exactly. Just a bed." His voice was light, but his expression lingered. We got in, both on our respective edges, backs turned. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. The silence was loud. I could hear every shift of the mattress, every breath he took. Then he sighed and mumbled something. "What?" I said. "This isn't that weird, right?" Not unless you're making it weird. He laughed, low and breathy. You always do that. Deflect. My heart ticked faster. Do what? Pretend you don't notice when I'm trying to get you to talk, I swallowed. Well, you're hard to ignore. He didn't say anything after that. But I felt the air between us change. Not heavy, but charged. Like something unspoken was hovering in the space just out of reach. I rolled over, carefully, and saw that he was already looking at me. Not smiling, not joking, just watching. Our eyes met. He didn't look away, and that's when I knew. He'd been holding something too. Maybe not the same thoughts, maybe not for as long, but something. Something real. I looked away first, cheeks warm. The mattress creaked as he shifted again, and the distance between us shrank just slightly. Not enough to touch. Just enough to feel it. It started raining the second night. Not a soft drizzle either. A torrential, cold, sideways storm that roared against the roof like it had something personal to prove. We had just finished dinner, frozen pizza that somehow tasted better after being slightly burnt, when the lights flickered, then died completely. Dylan stood frozen, a slice of pizza halfway to his mouth. Well, that's cozy. I sighed and lit the flashlight on my phone. Didn't your friend say something about the generator being a bit moody? Yeah, I figured that meant it liked long walks on the beach and talking about its feelings. No, I said, already pulling on my hoodie. It means we're screwed. The cabin turned from rustic charm to eerie silence in seconds. No Wi-Fi, no light, just the wind howling and the occasional groan of the trees outside. We gathered the few candles we'd found in the kitchen drawer earlier, mismatched stubs that smelled like pumpkin spice and eucalyptus, and set them up around the living room. The whole place glowed in flickering amber light. Warm, soft, too intimate. I tried to focus on the crackling fire, on the sound of the rain, on anything other than how close Dylan was sitting now. Our knees kept brushing. It was nothing. Accidental. But every time it happened, I felt it like a spark down my spine. I think we're officially off-grid, he said, rubbing the back of his neck and letting his head fall back against the couch. Guess we'll have to actually talk like old-fashioned people, I replied. Terrifying. He glanced over at me then, and something in his expression softened. You okay? Yeah. Just cold. Here, he said, lifting the blanket between us. You're shivering. I hesitated. He raised an eyebrow. We've literally shared a hoodie, dude. Don't go shy on me now. So I slid under the blanket, careful to keep some space between us. That didn't last. A minute later, our shoulders were touching, and he let out a satisfied little sigh like this was the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't. Not for me. Not with the way my chest kept tightening. Not with the way I kept noticing every detail. The rhythm of his breathing, the faint scent of his shampoo, the warmth of his leg against mine. Every inch of closeness felt like a test. He shifted again, one arm stretching casually along the back of the couch, behind me, not touching but close enough to feel. His thumb brushed my shoulder for a second too long before retreating. My heart lurched. You're really tense, he murmured. It's cold, I said, though it wasn't. No, like your shoulders. You always get like this when you're overthinking. I blinked at him. I do? He nodded. You carry everything here. His fingers tapped my shoulder gently. Want me to? I turned slightly, confused. To what? Give you a massage. I mean, it's not weird. I've done it before, back in high school for the swim team. That was the moment. That was the edge. I could have said no. Should have, probably. But instead, I nodded and turned my back to him, drawing my knees up slightly on the couch. He didn't speak as he began, just rested his hands on my shoulders for a moment, grounding me. Then slowly, he pressed his thumbs in. Firm, deliberate, careful. It was too much and not enough all at once. My breath caught in my throat. Damn, he muttered. You're like a stone wall, thanks? I meant that in the least flattering way possible, he teased, but his voice was quiet, softer than usual. His hands moved lower, kneading between my shoulder blades, working tension from muscles I didn't realize were so tight. Every now and then, his fingers would brush against my neck, and I'd have to fight the urge to lean back into the touch. "You okay?" he asked again, this time with a little more weight behind it. "Yeah," I said, my voice quieter than I meant. "Feels good." He didn't answer right away, just kept going, slower now, like he didn't want it to end either. When he finally did stop, his hands lingered for a beat too long before falling away. "There," he said, his voice husky. "Better?" I turned to face him. "Yeah, thanks." And then we just looked at each other. Really looked. No joke on his lips. No smirk. Just this raw, open silence stretching between us. I don't know how long it lasted. A few seconds? A lifetime? Then the power came back on. A loud click, a soft hum, and the cabin filled with soft white light. We both blinked, almost startled. He rubbed the back of his neck again and looked away, chuckling nervously. "Guess the massage worked. You look kinda dazed." "I'm fine," I said quickly. Too quickly. "Right, cool. Anyway, I'm gonna, grab some water." And just like that, he was gone. Heading toward the kitchen, leaving me alone with my pulse still racing and my body warm in a way that had nothing to do with the fire. I leaned back into the couch, heart thudding. Something was happening. Something I couldn't pretend was just friendship anymore. Dylan didn't bring up the massage for the rest of the night. After the power came back, everything felt louder. The fridge humming, the fire crackling. Even our silence had a new shape, unspoken and heavy, like we were both pretending nothing had just happened. He stayed in the kitchen longer than necessary, sipping from a glass of water and avoiding eye contact. I stayed on the couch, staring into the fire, pretending I wasn't still replaying the feel of his hands on my back. When he finally came back, he flopped onto the opposite end of the couch like a safe reset had been pressed. We watched a movie, or at least, it played in the background while we both sat there pretending not to notice the inches of space between us. He laughed at the dumb jokes. I smiled when he did. Neither of us leaned closer. Not again. When the credits rolled, he looked over and said, "Hey, so, about earlier?" I turned to him. "Yeah?" He scratched at his jaw, eyes flicking between me and the now dead firelight. "You're good, right? I didn't cross a line?" There it was. A way out. An open door to laugh it off, make it small, sweep it under the rug, and keep everything safe. But I was tired of pretending. Tired of keeping everything locked in my chest like it didn't matter. I shifted to face him fully. "No, you didn't." "That's the problem." His brows pulled together. "What do you mean?" I exhaled slowly. "I liked it. Too much." His mouth parted, but no sound came out. And I've been trying so hard not to. For months now. Telling myself it's just a phase, or a crush, or something that will pass if I ignore it hard enough. He was still frozen, staring at me like I'd just knocked the wind out of him. "Wait, are you saying—" I looked away, heart racing. "I think I like you, Dylan. Not just roommate-like or best friend-like. Like. God, I sound like I'm in high school." He blinked a few times, like his brain was catching up to his ears. "You've liked me? Since when?" "I don't know. Since forever. Maybe. Since that day you brought me coffee out of nowhere. Since I noticed how you bite your lip when you're nervous. Since I realized I cared too much when you dated that girl sophomore year. Since I caught myself smiling at your texts like an idiot." A long, pulsing silence stretched between us. "I get it if you don't feel the same," I added quickly, panic bubbling up. "I just needed to say it. I couldn't keep pretending anymore." His voice, when it came, was softer than I expected. "Why didn't you tell me?" I let out a breath that shook a little. "Because I didn't want to lose what we had. Because I was scared you'd think it was gross. Or worse, pity me." Dylan sat forward, elbows resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on the floor. For a moment, I thought he might actually stand up and leave. But then he turned to me, slowly, Like whatever he was about to say took effort. I thought about it too, he said. I blinked. What? Not always. But lately. A lot. He rubbed the back of his neck. There were times I'd catch myself staring too long, thinking too much, wondering what it'd feel like to, I don't know, hold your hand, or kiss you. And then I'd feel stupid, like I was messing with something I didn't understand. I was speechless. He looked as thrown off as I felt. Why didn't you say anything? I whispered. Because you're important to me, he said. And I didn't want to screw that up. You're the only person I can actually be quiet around and not feel weird. You're safe. The word hit me like a warm wave. Safe. Not boring. Not just there. Safe. I leaned in without realizing. So what now? What? He looked at me then, really looked, and something in his expression cracked wide open. Now, I think I want to try. You sure? No, he said, a nervous laugh escaping. But I'm sure I don't want to keep pretending I don't. Think about you every time you smile at me like that. Like what? Like you want to kiss me. My breath caught. And if I did? He didn't answer with words. Instead, he leaned in, slow, careful, giving me every second to pull away. But I didn't. I closed the distance. The kiss was soft, hesitant, the kind that asks a question instead of making a statement. His lips were warm, his breath shaky, and when we pulled back, our foreheads rested against each other like neither of us wanted the moment to end. He let out a small, almost disbelieving chuckle. Okay, that was... wow. Yeah, I murmured, still catching my breath. Definitely not just a massage. He grinned, eyes sparkling. Guess we both kind of failed at keeping it casual. I'm okay with failing at that. We didn't rush into more. We just sat there, fingers slowly tangling together between us. A shared silence bloomed, comfortable and new. The kind of quiet that didn't need to be filled. Eventually, he rested his head on my shoulder. I leaned into it, my heart finally, feeling like it had a home. I'm still scared, I admitted. Me too, he said. But also, I think this is worth the risk. And in that moment, surrounded by flickering candlelight and the sound of rain still tapping gently at the windows, I believed him. The next morning, something was different. But not in the way I'd feared. It wasn't awkward or heavy. If anything, it felt... lighter. Like some invisible weight we'd both been carrying had finally been set down. I woke up to the scent of coffee and the sound of Dylan humming off-key in the kitchen. For a second, I thought I'd dreamed the whole thing, the confession, the kiss, the way his fingers had gently laced with mine before we fell asleep. But then he walked into the living room, hair still messy, holding 2 mismatched mugs. Morning, he said, handing me one. Thanks, I mumbled, blinking the sleep from my eyes. He sat down beside me on the couch, not an inch of hesitation in the way his knee rested against mine. You snore, by the way, he added casually. I do not. You definitely do. Cute, but loud. I rolled my eyes, but I could feel the smile tugging at my lips. It was strange, how normal it felt to tease each other like this, like nothing had changed, except everything had. He nudged my foot with his. So, that wasn't just a one-night emotional breakdown, right? No, I said, more seriously now. Not for me. Good. Because if it was, I'd have to dramatically walk into the lake and never return. Tempting offer. He chuckled, then fell quiet for a moment. His thumb brushed over the rim of his mug. I meant what I said last night, he said. I don't know what I'm doing, not entirely. But I know I want to do it with you. That part's clear. I nodded slowly. We'll figure it out. I don't need all the answers right now. We'll have to talk about what happens back on campus, he said. Like, do we tell people, or keep it between us for a bit? I thought about that. About the looks, the questions, the assumptions. Let's just take it slow, I said. Not hide it. but not announce it either. Cool. Secret boyfriends it is. I raised an eyebrow. Boyfriends? His cheeks flushed slightly. Too soon? Little bit, I said, grinning. But I'm not against the title. Just maybe boyfriend in training? He smirked. Like an internship. Unpaid but full benefits? Exactly. He laughed and leaned in, brushing a kiss to my cheek. Quick, but warm. We didn't need to rush into defining everything. We just needed to enjoy what we'd finally let happen. The rest of the day passed in an easy haze. Pancakes with too much syrup, card games by candlelight when the power flickered again, and whispered jokes that made us laugh until our stomachs hurt. And always, beneath it all, the quiet comfort of knowing we were no longer pretending. Later that night, we lay side by side in bed, the rain gentler now, like the storm had passed inside and out. You know, Dylan said, I used to think love was supposed to hit you like lightning, and now? He turned his head to look at me, his expression soft in the dim light. Now I think maybe it's more like a slow sunrise. You don't notice it at first, but then one day you look around, and everything's just warmer. I didn't know what to say to that. Only that it made something tighten in my chest in the best possible way. So I reached for his hand under the covers, and he laced our fingers together like it was second nature. We didn't need fireworks or perfect timing. We just needed this. A quiet moment, a shared truth, and the slow, steady start of something real. By the time we packed up the car and headed back to campus, the storm had long passed. The road was still slick with yesterday's rain, but the sky had cleared. That early spring kind of blue that feels like a fresh start. Dylan drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on the center console. I glanced down, and after a moment of hesitation, I placed my hand on top of his. He didn't say anything, just laced our fingers together without taking his eyes off the road, his thumb brushing softly over my skin. That was the thing about Dylan. He didn't always need to say it out loud. His actions spoke for him. And right now, everything about the way he held my hand, calm, steady, unafraid, said he wasn't going anywhere. We were quiet for most of the drive. Not because there was nothing to say, but because there was no pressure to fill the silence anymore. It felt good, easy, like we were both finally breathing normally again. As we pulled into campus, I felt that familiar twinge of nerves tighten in my chest. The weekend had been a kind of bubble, safe, removed from reality. But now we were back in the real world. Dorms, classmates, crowded dining halls, expectations, questions. What do we do now? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Dylan looked over at me, then turned off the engine. We go inside. We unpack. We keep doing what we've always done. Except now. Maybe we hold hands when no one's looking. I smiled. And when someone is looking? He paused, then leaned over and kissed me. A slow, deliberate press of lips that didn't rush, didn't ask for anything more. Just a quiet statement. When they're looking, he said, pulling back, we don't flinch. That night, back in our apartment, things felt different. Not drastically. He still left his shoes in the middle of the hallway. I still nagged him about taking out the trash, but the space between us was no longer filled with guesswork. When we sat on the couch, he sat closer. When I laughed, he leaned in like he wanted to catch every sound, and when we turned in for the night, we didn't argue about the sleeping bag. We just slid under the same blanket, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Before we fell asleep, he reached into his backpack and pulled something out. A tiny, cheap souvenir keychain shaped like a cabin, the kind you'd find at a gas station. What's this? I asked, taking it from him. A reminder, he said, of where everything changed, or maybe just where we stopped pretending. I turned it over in my hand, smiling. You're such a sap. Only for you. I clipped it to the zipper of my backpack the next morning before class. A small, silly token. But it meant something. Something real. Things weren't going to be perfect. We still had conversations to have. maybe even some pushback to face from others. But we were no longer two people dancing around the edges of something unnamed. We were us now. Imperfect. Unexpected. Real. And as we walked across campus later that week, our shoulders bumping, his pinky brushing mine, he looked over and grinned. "You know," he said, "this all started because of a back massage." I laughed. "You offering again?" "Only if you promise not to fall in love with me this time." I bumped him with my shoulder. "Too late." He smiled, eyes bright. "Good." The path ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of where it might lead, because whatever came next, we'd figure it out, together.